use the word emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1016.LK1202, certificate number 21137, the Quadro Tracker.
Wilma, I promise you, whatever scum did this, not one man on this force will rest for 1 minute until he's behind bars. Now let's grab a bite to eat.
Yeah, come on. I feel like I've learned a lot about religion being a friend of yours. We talk about it quite a bit, and it comes up.
Yeah, you seem like a more enlightened soul now. I feel like I've done good work here.
Yeah, you have. You've brought the light into my life, and we both have moral codes. Yours is maybe a little more codified than mine.
Mine has more footnotes.
Yeah, mine's pretty ad hoc, but it's still pretty strong, wouldn't you say? I have
Man of principle.
That's right. But I don't know.
There's really no other way to answer that question, by the way. Wouldn't you say I have a strong moral code? Yes.
No, I don't think so. I think there are a lot of ways that you could say, I don't know. Don't you think you
feel like you need to work on
a little wiggly on stuff?
Golden rule? Yeah. And no, not at all. I didn't hesitate a second.
But I'm unclear on a lot of things, and one of them is there's no karmic element in Christianity. Is there? Do you have a sense that there is justice in our time? Like, do you feel like people get their comeuppance?
The religious question of comeuppance is interesting. You know, Jesus did tell his followers that, you know, in his kingdom, the last would be first and the first would be last. Now, the question is,
what does that mean?
Those who are currently advantaged are going to reap the whirlwind. Those who are really having a rough time of it now are finally going to have something good happen to them.
It's the camel through the eye hole again.
That's karmic, I guess. But the question of the interpretation is Jesus saying, you know, you, my followers, should be building a world where this is possible? That would kind of be the activist,
Marxist,
social justice.
Yes, the liberation theologists.
Exactly. We should be liberated now, and we should be liberating our fellow man, as opposed to, I think, maybe a more traditional view, which would be, we're just going to have to suck it up now because life's kind of a nightmare, and what Christ promises is redemption from that in a different world to come.
When you get to the gates of heaven and St. Peter asks you,
what is your wish?
Give us your wish, your one wish.
Famously, I like how this combines the two great joke structures, the gates of heaven and then wishing on a genie. The two funniest things that anybody in America could think of in the mid-century.
You know, the idea of instant karma is one of the things that really appeals to Americans who want to piecemeal adopt Buddhism and yoga without any of the hard parts.
What do you mean by instant? Is this like when
what do I mean, or what did John Lennon mean?
Well, I like to watch dashboard cam videos where a car does something stupid and then immediately gets sideswiped or gets pulled over or spins across traffic.
What you don't see are the 10,000 dashboard cameras where people did something stupid and got away with it clean.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Life is so obviously full of that you like to see the actual comeuppances. Comeupance? Are you saying that, what do you mean by instant karma?
Well, I mean, we use the term justice a lot in contemporary society with a lot of different interpretations of what justice means. And some people use it and you get the sense that they think it's synonymous with revenge.
Right. And on the other hand, there's people who use it to mean perfect equity.
Right. Justice is,
however you try to define that,
is one of those words where, at least right now, it gets used a lot and everybody assumes that everybody agrees on what it means. But in fact,
justice is polling very well.
What do you mean by justice exactly? Instant karma is just that I think the hope that malfeasance will be rewarded in this lifetime with punishment. You don't want people to get away with murder. And a big part of our justice system and our reliance on the law and our confidence in the law is that you won't be unfairly prosecuted, but if you're guilty, it will be found out.
Anecdotally, I think all of us move through our lives seeing people not compensated appropriately by the universe for their actions, right? You see the wrong people getting ahead all the time.
Right. Why is Steve Bannon not already at the bottom of the ocean, tied with chains to a cinder block? It's just an anomaly. It's just a fissure in the curtain.
Generally, these observations are in the form of the first person. Like, why don't I have fill in the blank?
No, it's just I'm just out to get Steve Bannon.
That's yours. Yours is very focused.
I feel like I'm fine.
You're the Captain Ahab of Steve Bannon. No, but just generally, we make these comparisons in coordination with ourselves. Like, I slave away and I blah, 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 and this has to happen to me. And yet it's amplified by social media where where others get to post their wins or lie about their happiness in order to project an outward simulacrum of having no problems.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I got hit by an internet tidal wave that was maybe not in exact relativity to
proportion
to the crimes I've committed in life.
To the story you had told.
I haven't been the best person, but there are people then in the world that seem to be able to say stage insurrections against our government that walk away with impunity. But for the most part, it feels like the justice system is doing a fairly good job of rewarding criminals with punishment and with protecting the innocent relative to either a lack of justice system or justice systems in prior times. It is not the ideal justice system, but like the dash cam videos, we spend a lot of time seeing the instances where it doesn't work.
And all it takes is crossing a border into a place where there's a strong corruption economy and justice outcomes are just related to who handed who what size check or what denominations of money in a briefcase.
I've told you about the hour I spent sitting at the Slovenian border while the guy said my papers weren't in order. And I kept failing to get his hint.
I think so. And how much did you end up paying to get into
None.
Slovenia?
He just
that explains why you're not in Slovenia today.
That's right. I was in Slovenia trying to get out.
Oh. Well, you apparently made it.
The number of times that
this is the most boring version of Midnight Express.
I've been hit up for bribes so many times and I never get the hint. It's like when somebody in a bar is like, hey, what are you doing later or whatever? And I never get the hint. I'm always like, oh, I got a lot of stuff to do.
Oh, good question. Well, I've got this spreadsheet I've been working on of...
I'll probably go home and play guitar. Oh, do you want to walk me home? Oh, you live like a long way away. I know somebody headed that way. But there are certain sort of, and this often happens in the financial crimes sector, where some white collar criminal will do an incredible amount of damage to the world, a damage that reverberates out through their, shuffling of paperwork, their Ponzi scheme, and
their mismanagement of Lehman Brothers.
Yeah, and in the end, it feels like they got a slap on the wrist. There was no punishment.
They played tennis for 5 months at a low security facility.
Yeah, and then
somebody else
who-
bought weed 3 times.
Exactly, and they're in prison for the rest of their lives. So there are those. There are so many inequities, but there are that kind of inequity often chafes because a banking crime can throw the whole nation upside down, and hundreds of people lose their mortgages, and that person gets a bonus. Gets forcibly retired and gets all their options vested.
It's a little unsavory peek into how laws get written and why. The people drafting the laws know how well it polls to say, we're going after these drug criminals selling drugs to your kids, ma'am. Whereas, you could probably make, let's send my rich friends to jail. You could probably make that a winning electoral issue. But it would be your friends you're sending to jail.
Listen, I don't want to hear your Marxist take on it, Ken. Dang it.
That's enough. Hold up your there you go.
I am not compatible with Marxism at this. I'm just so tired of the world. Maybe I should just spend the rest of this episode just talking about video games. No, I'm going to keep going on the topic that I've chosen today.
Which is?
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you yet.
It would really violate all precedent if you did, but I thought I would take a shot.
Well, there are a lot of problems in the world. And,
granted.
Name some of those problems.
There is climate change.
Okay,
don't
get all hippie on me. Name some other problems.
What am I supposed to say? Like when the parking meter won't take your credit card?
There you go.
Okay, that's a real one.
That's a real problem. No, there are lots of problems. And problems, as you just indicated, are different groups and different people see the problems very differently. You and I would say climate change is a major problem. A lot of people would say.
Apparently, I would say climate change. You would say the credit card app not working.
Credit card app. No, I was just being fun because I agree that climate change is a problem. I'm not really worried about, here in Seattle, if the credit card doesn't work in your parking meter, it doesn't work anymore, or it doesn't matter anymore because I don't know if you've experimented with this, but somebody said to me a couple of months ago, the Seattle cops aren't ticketing people for parking anymore because there's not enough money in the budget, and they're sucking their thumb about defund the police.
They're dragging their feet.
And so they're not doing it. And I was like, oh, that seems a little crazy. And they were like, no, try it. Just park somewhere and don't put money in the meter and see what happens. And as you can attest, in Seattle, you used to get a ticket if the meter was expired for 3 minutes.
I was in a 2-hour spot near Cinerama, and I saw a 2-hour and 10-minute movie, and I got a ticket.
A ticket, right. So I don't know when it was, a month or two ago, I parked in a spot and I was like, you know what? I'm going to pay the $60 ticket or whatever it is just to see if there's any truth to this. No ticket. I came back hours later.
Proof.
And so then I stopped paying the parking meters and I don't get tickets. It's like anarchy. It's crazy town. Now we were talking about our various moral stances.
Yeah.
And
I watch the leaders. I don't follow leaders. You don't watch the parking meters.
I used to always put in the maximum amount, even if I was only going to be there for a few minutes, because you never know when somebody comes along, you meet somebody on the sidewalk, they're like, let's go on an adventure. You're like, oh, I only put in 10 minutes on the parking meter. So I always put in the maximum amount.
For adventure.
So just in case. So I feel like I've paid into the system and now I'm reaping its benefits. I was going to a Husky game.
It's like Social Security. That's your money.
That's right. I invested it, and now it's coming home to roost. I went to a Husky game, and I didn't want to go down to the university to deal with all that. And I pulled up in front of the Broadway light rail station, and there was a parking spot right in front of the door to the light rail station.
Wow.
But it had a 1-hour limit or something, and I was going to be at the Husky game all afternoon. And I said, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice on this again. Came out 5 p.m. There was the truck. No ticket.
I have some terrible news because I do not want you to get a ticket.
Okay.
It would wound me.
Okay.
My son came home from college the other day and he was furious. He was like, I got another parking ticket. And we said, what do you mean another one? He's like, well, I parked in the same place where I got a parking ticket last week and they gave me another ticket. Why are they ticketing me again? They already ticketed me for parking there. He was
him.
He was furious at the injustice.
I love him.
That he would get a ticket again for parking in the same illegal spot.
He didn't do the thing we used to do, which is carry the ticket around in your glove box and put it on
the thing every
in
time.
your car and hope that the
He said, "Where am I supposed to park? It's right in front of my house." And I think Mindy's the one talking to him on the phone, and she said, "Where's well, does the sign say it's for zone whatever only? Does the sign say it's 2 hours except for zone whatever?" And he's like, "No." Wait, yes. Wait, what does that mean? Well, it is for people who live there to park it, but you have to go get a zone 12 thing so they know you're a resident. So apparently in the U District, they are still enforcing the neighborhood zones.
Yeah, the neighborhood zones.
I hate to break this to you.
Well, it's all right. I actually I don't go to town anymore. So I've only ever done this 3 times. I was trying to make it sound like this was my new scheme, but I was
hosting Jeopardy the other day, and some woman announces she's from as you do. She's hosting Jeopardy. And one of the contestants is from Seattle. So when I walk over to get the photo, we take a little photo together. You get a souvenir photo with the host, whether you want it or not. I said, "Oh, where in Seattle do you live?" And she says, "I live right above," and she names a parking garage where I park all the time. And she says, "Oh, that's funny. I've parked under your building." And she says, "Yeah, a lot of people do. You know what? They're not enforcing it now." And I was like, this is like news you can use. This is the most exciting announcement I've ever heard on the Jeopardy set.
You park there a lot.
Is that, they're not enforcing in her building.
You've got a smile across your whole face. Are you going to start not paying at the parking garage?
What if she's pranking me?
I don't think so. That doesn't seem like something.
I think she was in second place, I think, when she told me this. So maybe she was unhappy with me. I think I might. I don't want to announce. Maybe
do it.
I don't want to say where it is.
Do it, Ken.
I'm going to put it on the Patreon. If you give it the at the Seattle Scofflaw tier, I'll tell you which highly in demand parking garage is no longer enforcing parking at the moment.
Well, a lot of people in the country are less concerned with parking and more concerned with gas and food prices or whatever. But I think the perennial things for people to be worried about are crime and drugs and
even if crime is actually quite low, you can still angry people up about it.
They get angry about it. And also the things that go along with crime and drugs, including guns and water buffalo. I mean, it's the usual stuff.
A lot of the people mad about crime and drugs are not mad about guns.
Right, except guns in the wrong hands, right? This is the famous thing, like the NRA somehow never recruited in Watts, even though there probably would have been a great organization there. So yeah, there are the guns in the hands of the gun people, and then there are the other guns.
Can you tell me anything about the hands the gun are in so I know how to feel about this? Tell me about the pigment of those hands.
It's just a kind of thing about hands. Some hands know how to handle guns. Other hands don't. If you're selling guns, you have a much broader sense of who should own a gun than if you are enforcing the laws about guns, where your opinion changes.
So crime and drugs really angry up middle America, independent voters.
Well, but that's true. But also crime and drugs angry, as you say, angry up. Is that a Gen Z term that you're adopting? Angry up.
I feel like it's like an old-timey prospector.
Oh. That angried me up.
Angried up my blood.
I don't know if I've ever heard it. It might be a frontier phrase that skipped my people.
Maybe I made it up.
But drugs and guns are global issues. They angry up a lot of people, and also they justify an awful lot of spending, police spending and military spending to interdict guns and drugs as they flow freely between nations. The U.S. government has made it in their award-winning global anti-drug war.
Good housekeeping? Who's giving the drug war a seal of approval?
I think of all the drug wars, the one that the United States has been waging for the last 40 years has got to be in the top 5.
Second place, the banned war on drugs.
So the United States has enlisted a lot of other nations in its global war on drugs, and other nations have then taken the lead and started their own war on drugs, because often drugs are used by the insurrectionist Marxist guerrillas to fund their campaign against the junta.
Well, they fund all kinds of no good nicks.
Yes.
And it's whoever's opposing the current regime.
Whoever is opposing the current regime. And the problem, of course, is that we have a lot of technology now. We have drones, and we have undersea radar, and we have vibraphones. We have psychics.
Vibraphones?
Yeah.
Like Lionel Hampton?
We have, in fact, Lionel Hampton's vibraphone. We know where it is.
It's posted on the Mexican border.
We have the internet. We have lots of snitches, but it's still very hard to enforce the law.
Drugs and guns are small.
Yes.
The secret of drugs and guns, they're small.
You can make a gun only so small, but you can make a drug very
Drugs
small.
are like a powder.
Yeah.
Imagine keeping that out of the cracks.
If you're Cheech and Chong, you can make a whole van out of drugs. And it's like, there's nothing in this van. It's empty. Ha ha, joke's on you. The van is made of drugs.
That seems like it would not be safe.
No, your tailpipe heats up and it catches on
there are
fire.
parts of your car that should not be made of drugs.
And then Stacy Keach gets all stoned.
Is this up in smoke?
Yeah, afraid so.
Okay.
Maybe we'll do an omnibus someday on the great films of Cheech and Chong.
Cheech and Chong could be an omnibus just by virtue of having enormous cultural currency
And now
and very little. Like if you were born after 1980,
80, I think. Would you, even if you were born in 1980, I guess you would know about Cheech and Chong? There'd still be a poster in the basement.
A few VHS tapes somewhere.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, although I don't know.
Parents, take your kids aside and teach them about Cheech and Chong. It's never too early.
If you were a stoner now, is Cheech and Chong part of, if you were like a 20-year-old stoner, is it part of like the stoner collected like juggernaut of wisdom?
No. Like you have somebody, you have Cheech and Chong filtered through Dude, Where's My Car? Or something.
Right.
I almost wonder if it wouldn't read as funny. I almost wonder if it's too broad. You would be like, this kind of drug humor doesn't resonate with me, and I am on so many drugs.
Right. Yeah, nobody really slips and falls in a Cheech and Chong movie, and they're pretty sexist. Let's be honest. Anyway, there's a lot of technology used to stop the flow of drugs and guns, but that technology often involves squadrons of helicopters and fortified borders in the case of the United States. Giant border walls. It's very expensive. And what everyone wants in law enforcement is something small and reliable that can help you detect drugs.
It doesn't have to be constitutional. Hey, they'll tell you right off, look, it doesn't have to be constitutional. I just want something small.
Right. I just want something
that can help me find drugs and guns.
And I think Star Trek really kind of influences people here because a tricorder is such an elegant little device. And I mean, you're more of a Trekkie than I am. Can you tell me all the things a tricorder can do?
I don't know. It often just seems you can hold it up to anything and it will tell you. I mean, it's usually used on organisms.
Yeah.
You hold up a tricorder and Jim, this man is dying. Jim, this man is pregnant. Jim, this man's actually an Orion slave trader.
Right. But do they ever hold up a tricorder to a rock and tell the composition of the rock?
I feel like maybe. Yeah. It does it all. And the idea that, as a plot device, you can turn to somebody on the bridge of Star Trek and be like, tell me what's happening on the planet. And Spock will look in a thing designed to keep the audience from seeing this so they don't have to pay for it. And Spock will say, the people are rioting on the planet, or the solar storms are increasing on the planet, or, the idea is, your starship just has magic beams that will do whatever the plot requires without the budget having to pay for it.
Yeah, Spock looks into like one of those 3D, like black and white.
He's got like a big Viewmaster.
Yeah,
for some
Viewmaster.
reason.
Yeah. It's one of the disappointing things about phones and digital watches, internet-connected phones and watches, is that there's just not. Those watches they can tell you your heart rate, but they can't even really tell you your blood pressure because it requires like two different systems of measurement. But you can't hold your watch up, believe me, I've tried, to another person and have it tell you anything about them.
Somehow there are magic rays on the electromagnetic spectrum we have not discovered yet.
Yeah.
That would give us this information. But we have not harnessed them.
You walk into any business now and they ask you to scan a QR code to look at a freaking menu or do anything anymore. Like, hi, welcome, scan our QR code. No, I don't want to. I know I can. I have the technology.
And that's not even good tech. That's not even magic tech. That's just like, you could learn to do that. You could learn to read a bunch of white and black squares and be like, this is the one that says the cheeseburger has bacon on it.
But what you can't do is turn the camera phone on and scan, for instance, you and have it tell me anything useful about you.
No. Luckily. I don't want you to know that I'm an Orion slave trader.
Right. But if I were in law enforcement, I would be a little, I think even...
You'd want to scan everything.
I would. I'd be a little more chuffed.
People in that line of work start out suspicious and they get more suspicious as their career goes on because of all the unsavory things that happen to them.
Particularly if I were standing guard at a border, say, between Slovenia and Austria, and I wanted to check for contraband, I would be very frustrated that the people that were smuggling would say, just scan the QR code. It tells you everything that's in the van. And it doesn't tell you that it's full of drugs or made of drugs.
So we have not replaced the mirror on a long stick.
Well, actually, Ken, we have.
What is mirror 2.0 on a long stick 2.0?
The new mirror on the and the mirror on a stick, Ken is making reference to a Cold War era way of that the East German border guards used to try and detect whether there were any border hoppers
under your car, under your Citroen.
Yeah, your Citroen. They had basically a hand mirror on a long pole. I guess maybe they still use those at borders.
I bet those get used for others. I've seen them in movies for, is there a bomb on this thing?
I haven't crossed the East German border in several years. So.
No, few people have.
Yeah. Yes, in the 90s, the technology finally caught up with the demand and for the first time, enabled the construction of a technology device that allowed for the, how would you say, the detection of all kinds of contraband with a simple handheld device called the Quadro tracker.
Quadro?
The Quadro tracker.
Quadro meaning four.
Quadro meaning four, although the inventor of the Quadro tracker was a man named Wade L. Quattlebaum.
Oh. I didn't think that was going to happen. And so he's a Harry Potter character.
Yeah, Wade L. Quattlebaum, presumably named at least the first part of the Quadro tracker after himself. He could have called it the Quaddle tracker, but that wouldn't, I don't think, have sounded as technological.
Like law enforcement wants something that sounds cool and masculine, like that might be in the movie Delta Force.
And even Wade L. Quattlebaum isn't like the most sort of jump out of an airplane name.
No, I mean, he sounds like a little elf or gnome.
Well, Wade was a card salesman from South Carolina and an avid golfer. And before he became an inventor, like most inventors, when they come up with something, right, they initially have a problem that they need to solve. And then they turn their imaginations and their technical skill to solving this problem. And then in solving it, they realize they've made something that can actually help the world. Right? That's how Beanie Babies got invented. Somebody was like, I want a baby, but I want it to be made of beans.
Full of bean bags, yeah.
And somebody was like, aha, right? You have an aha moment. In the case of Wade L. Quattlebaum, his main problem he was trying to solve was that he kept losing golf balls on the golf course. And he wished there were a device to enable you to detect,
find your golf ball
and find your missing.
And he doesn't want to put any kind of tracer or tracker in the golf ball.
See, that would be your first thought, right?
I left my wallet on a plane the other day, and I was kicking myself for not getting one of these little tracker things you can put in your wallet that'll tell you where it is.
Yeah, were you though?
Well, I've thought of, I've left, this is like the second or third time I've left a wallet on a plane. Cause you sit down and it kind of hooches up out of your pocket and then, and yeah, it's a little bit sexy. And each time I do this, I think if I had just bought whatever that $65 chip is that sits in your wallet, I would have something to go on here. I wouldn't feel so powerless. And each time I do not do it, and then luckily American Airlines had my wallet. But
Oh, they did.
yeah, I was as surprised as anyone.
And they got you back. They got the wallet back.
Not the money. They put the money in a safe. We'll send you a check in
No.
6 to 8 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, they're worried about you.
Oh, they have the money.
They didn't just disperse it to the flight attendants on the flight as tips. They just don't keep it in the wallet for security reasons.
Well, I actually dropped my wallet one time on the Hoover Dam, and it was full of money. It was
Bulging.
It was bulging with money.
Nice
because
humble brag.
I was at the end of a tour. I had all this cash in the wallet. I dropped it on the Hoover Dam, and I got a letter from a park ranger at the Hoover Dam.
They're honest folks. The park
And they
rangers.
said, "We found your thing," and they sent it back to me, but it did not have any of the many, many dollars that had been in it formerly.
Do you feel like the ranger claimed a reward?
Well, I'm not going to say that the ranger did. I think probably some tourist found it and then took the money and then gave the wallet to the ranger. Right? Doesn't that seem more?
I agree.
Yeah. Some sleaze that was coming from Vegas that had lost everything found like this wallet with.
And let's face it, you were getting paid under the table by club owners. You weren't going to pay taxes on all
Hey,
that
come
anyway.
on. That's not true. Wade Quattlebaum, who was a Navy veteran of the Korean War. He was a car salesman, an avid outdoorsman.
You haven't said anything about his engineering background.
Well, he didn't have a ton of engineering background, but that wasn't necessary, as we'll soon see. He went to work devising a golf ball finder. And in the process of discovery, and this happens a lot, you'll see it in pharmaceuticals a lot, where you develop, like my bipolar medicine is an anti-seizure drug that they discovered helped with bipolar people because they gave it to somebody that had both problems. And the person said, well, my seizures are still here, but weirdly, I
have a better attitude about it.
Yeah, I feel less like driving all night without putting gas in the car. Wade started to work on his golf ball finder and quickly discovered that the golf ball finder could detect not only golf balls, but drugs, weapons, explosives. It could find specific people.
This is surprising.
It could detect alcohol, gold, silver, missing children, dead pets, wild game. It was good at detecting ivory. In fact, it could detect almost anything.
This is remarkable.
Yeah.
Because there is detection technology. We have radar detectors, we have metal detectors.
Yes.
But they work on certain principles of looking for kind of one specific wavelength or substance. Whereas there's not a lot that a dead pet has in common with a golf ball or a, kilo of weed.
Well, let me explain some of the technology to you. This might go over your head. It's pretty technical language.
I am not an engineer.
But the way that the Quadro tracker works is that oscillating static electricity that's produced by respiration in the user, but also in the target, it charges free-floating neural electrons within what I'm about to describe, the signature card that's in the device. And then that sort of amplifies the major strength of the signal.
I'm kind of getting turbo encabulator.
It uses
vibes.
Nuclear quadrupole resonance.
Wait, nuclear quadrupole resonance?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. You think not nuclear quadrupole resonance, but yes.
It's just a coincidence that it uses the quad prefix of his name. That's lucky.
Yeah, it's quadrupole resonance. It also uses DIA/paramagnetism.
Okay.
All of this we'll see in a moment. The device is handheld, and it has basically three elements. There's the locator card, which I've described, which the locator card you buy from the Quadro Corp, and those locator cards are infused with elements, with the signature elements of the things you're trying to detect.
Oh, okay. That's why it can do such a broad array.
Yeah.
You'd have to slide in an ivory card if you're looking for ivory.
Exactly. You put the card into a card reader, which you wear on your belt, and then the card reader is connected through a tube to the handheld unit.
What, like a wand you're holding or something?
Well, it's a black plastic box, and then it has a metal wand that sticks out the front. And when the device is in action, it is powered by the operator's static electricity, and the wand will direct itself toward the contraband that it's detecting.
It doesn't beep or anything. The wand will actually move like a dowsing instrument.
So it works very much like a dowsing rod. The wand will follow, it will point you in the direction of the thing that you're trying to find. You can imagine that law enforcement was thrilled at the invention of this.
I mean, this revolutionizes so much of what they do. If they can just point a wand at the drugs or the gun and be drawn to it.
That's absolutely right. And there was another version of the card reader that actually would accept Polaroid pictures of missing people, and it could then read the Polaroid and determine from it the key sort of nucleotides that then would allow it to use oscillating static electricity to tell you the location of people. Up to they had tested it reliably up to a distance of over 500 miles, it seemed like it might work at an infinite distance.
An infinite distance. The nucleotides could be on Mars
or the other side of the Earth. Yes.
Was this actual language he used? Nucleotides?
No, I think I might have added nucleotides.
But the idea is that something about the appearance of the person in the picture is detectable by the device.
Yes. That would then enable the device to detect the person.
Even if they're not in line of sight.
Yes.
See,
they could be underwater or buried in the ground.
I've already had some difficulties understanding how this invention could possibly work. And the Polaroid is really stretching my credulity.
Well, that puts you in a category of people, like I'd say, within this story, in a minority of people.
Am I in rarefied
that didn't understand just instinctively the technology on offer and enthusiastically embrace it.
That was the main response was enthusiasm when he introduced the Quadro tracker?
Yes. The version that accepted Polaroid pictures cost $8,000 a unit.
Wow.
But you could get them at different prices depending on the capabilities, depending on the signature locator cards you wanted that came with the kit.
What was the era here? When is this happening?
So the Quadro Corp was founded in 1993.
90s?
The 90s, 1993.
I was going to guess wrong by decades.
By Wade Quattlebaum. And very quickly, the Quadro tracker became the must-have item in both law enforcement circles and school districts in certain parts of the country. And
police departments were buying these.
This may come as a surprise, but they were purchased in large amounts by the school districts of the states of Kansas, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, et al.
We hate to generalize, but
within the state of Texas, they bought them searching for and used them to search for missing children and drugs.
They're slipping Polaroids into this baby of the missing kid.
They paid, I think, $3,000 a piece for the units. Maybe there was a Texas cop discount, and for at least a couple of years, they were used to detect drugs, which, I forgot to mention, the Quadro tracker could detect drugs that you'd taken. Even if you didn't have any drugs on you, it could tell whether you had taken drugs up to weeks after.
So the wand is just moving toward a suspect in a car or
in a lot of cases,
or in an alley, or
a student walking into their high school.
I see.
It enabled the police to single out individuals.
You know what police love to do? Single out individuals. It's kind of why they got into it.
It's one of the things, right? And schools too. And this continued for a couple of years until a suspicious. Now this is a guy kind of like you, Ken.
We haven't seen anyone suspicious in this story yet. So far, everyone's been credulous.
An FBI agent, no less, named Ron Kelly, who was a Texas FBI agent, but he was talking to a friend from Louisiana who was on a narcotics task force. And the friend said, "Oh, man, we got this great Quadro tracker. It's really helping us find all the drugs and the kids that are on drugs and so forth and so on." And he said, "Really? Can I get can I borrow one for a little bit and just test it out?" This guy, this Mr. College here.
Is he already like, or is he excited about the invention?
I think that
he's skeptical already?
He's a little skeptical because he runs it through the X-ray machine that they keep at the courthouse to see if you have any chewing gum in your purse. Mm-hmm. And his findings in looking at an X-ray of the device leads him to contact the FBI. Now, there's something about the Quadro tracker. When you look at it, it would seem pretty easy to dismantle. But nobody seems willing to do it. And I think it's because it voids the warranty.
I see.
And so they
have to send it to Wade for repairs.
Yeah. So they acquire a Quadro tracker, the FBI does, and they send it to the Sandia National Laboratory. And Sandia does extensive research into the Quadro tracker and conclude that there are no electronics of any kind within the device.
I mean, to me, that just makes it a more remarkable invention. Imagine it doing all that it can do without a single piece of electronics.
You are not alone in that assessment, as we'll see. What they determined was that it had some wires that were not connected to anything. There was an antenna that was an antenna from a transistor radio.
See, you're saying it doesn't have electronics in it, but look at all this cool stuff it has.
I mean, it has parts for sure. And then it had, the chip, the key element of the technology, the locator chip within the device, was actually
a Fig Newton.
No, it probably tasted similar to a Fig Newton. It was dead ants, which had been frozen and then epoxied to a piece of paper.
Is this something that would, if you were trying to mock up a circuit board, is this what you would do? Freeze dry ants and paste them to a piece of paper? You could do better. You could do better just by going to a radio show.
The thing is that there's a lot we don't understand, Ken. There's a lot of magic in the world.
Life is full of mystery.
So Sandia Labs comes back to the FBI and says, this is not what we would, we do not find any electronics in it at all. I see no method at all, they said. And Quadro Inc. replied with a press release that said, inductors and oscillators found in our device aren't the type usually thought of by electronics experts.
I see.
So
you need to think outside the box.
Exactly.
If you want to find out what's inside the box.
Exactly. The problem was that Quattlebaum and his company, which at this point had sold over 1,000 of these devices for between $3,500 and $8,000 a piece, had made some false claims. What? They had claimed that the device was endorsed by the FBI, the DEA, and in the National Institute of Justice.
And that gives some cover to the local agencies. Oh, the FBI has these? Well, we'll take some.
Exactly.
I mean, you would expect them to look into those claims, but
But investigating the business, it was discovered that the two main, promoters of the business were actually assistant U.S. attorneys in the Houston office, two men by the name of Guy Womack and John Wagner.
oh, and these guys were really gung ho about it.
They were the ones that were promoting the device. They were in addition to being U.S. attorneys, they were also on the board, I guess, the board of directors of Quadro Corp, and had been promoting and pushing the device. And although they were never charged, Guy Womack pled the fifth in his deposition like 40 times. And eventually he resigned from the U.S. Attorney's Office and paid a $5,000 fine, but was never prosecuted. There were 4 mail fraud indictments against the 4 main, Quattlebaum and his the 3 other people that worked in his office.
The quadruplets?
They were all indicted for mail fraud, and all 4 were acquitted. Acquitted. Because...
What's the defense here?
Well, I'm not...
We thought it worked?
I'm not sure.
We thought the ants could do that?
That dead ants not connected to a transistor radio antenna can be shown not to detect drugs better than random chance. I'm not sure, acquitting in the United States it's not the craziest thing that happens in a court case.
It seems like a weird criminal scheme. If you're looking for someone, I mean, I guess
let's say you're looking for a golf ball.
Well, let's say you're looking for someone to defraud,
right.
as scam artists often are. I mean, I guess the virtue of picking, law enforcement in school districts is that they have considerable budgets,
right?
But they may not have subject area expertise. I mean,
and a lot of wishful thinking. There's so much credulity at work because it does feel to a non-technologist, let's say someone not in biometrics, it does seem almost possible that you could hold up your cell phone to somebody and they would say, "Oh, I can see your heart beating, and you have." It seems like Khan has put like a little lobster in your ear.
This does seem like the implementation is not particularly plausible, though. Like if it actually beeped sometimes,
right?
That's what you would want. The fact that it works like a dowsing rod,
yeah,
that just seems to.
It does.
That raises a lot more questions than it settles.
For me, it raises a lot of questions about what exactly is a criminal justice major in college, right?
Right.
Cops now have to get a college degree, and what are they teaching? But this isn't just, it's not individual cops that are buying this. This is police departments and school boards that are budgeting, that are, allocating.
That almost makes
funds.
it worse. Presumably the people in those positions should have some kind of training in which tools go in our budget this year, and let's read the reports about them.
It's what makes Ron Kelly such an unusual character, such a hero in this story. But that's not the end of the story.
So it never did anything.
What happened?
Are you afraid of getting sued?
What happened was that when the word went out from the FBI, and the FBI issued a press release saying the Quadro tracker is not a thing. It doesn't do anything. It's a fraud, and we're sorry that you spent $8,000 on them, but they don't.
No refunds.
Yeah. A lot of pushback happened from school districts who had
a bunch of success.
Yeah. Who said, well, we're not sure, about the technology. That's not our business, but we can tell you we've had a ton of success.
We've kicked so many kids out of school
in detecting criminals, right? And it's a case, they did a lot of double-blind tests, and it was a case where if the operator who had charged the device with their static electricity, if the operator knew where the drugs were, they had a 100% success rate in seeing the Quadro tracker detect the drugs. If they didn't know where the drugs were, the Quadro tracker behaved, or
0%.
well, or it was equal to what chance would, like if you had 5 people to pick one,
If you average out 0
1
and
in 5.
100, you get 50%. That's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is basically, it seems like a retelling of the facilitated communication story, where people are not aware of the tiny muscle movements that can let the subconscious mind direct you. And so they feel like, well, the wand was definitely pulling me that way.
Right.
It has to work.
To the kid I know is a bad kid.
It went to the Latino kid. Again, that's crazy.
That kid that wears his hat on backwards, he was carrying drugs, and the machine told me. So there were school districts.
And there's also part of the phenomenon that you can frisk a lot of kids at a high school in 1993 and they'll have drugs.
Eventually, yeah, right. There were school districts and law enforcement that said, okay, well, it may not work the way you think it does, but we're going to keep using it. The FBI was very clear. You cannot use the Quadro tracker as probable cause. Like if any of these cases go to court, you can't rely on the...
But I guess schools care less. They're just going to suspend the kid.
They're just going to grab the kid and put him up against the wall. And it's, it's a stop and frisk, basically, an excuse to say, this is a Kansas school district. We only know who the bad kids are. And now we've got a Quadro tracker to prove it.
How long did this last?
Well, the business, Quadrocorp was only in business from 93 to 96. But the Quadro tracker story doesn't end there. And now, the rest of the story.
It sure seems to me like it should end there.
It doesn't. In the early 2000s, a UK company called Global Technical released a product called the Mole Programmable Detection System, which was, if you see one, a Quadro tracker.
It right down to the wand and everything?
It has different stickers on it, but the same exact device. And because this was in the UK, they did not, I guess, get the memo from the FBI. And Global Technical was extremely successful in selling the Mole Programmable Detection System, because we were now in they were marketing it to a global drug and police enforcement.
So they're selling
climate.
They're selling it to drug agents in
Iraq,
Cambodia,
and Mexico, and Thailand, and Afghanistan, and Singapore, and on and on. They changed the name of the device to the GT200, the Global Technical 200, and it retailed for £22,000.
Well, it's inflation.
It also could detect, in addition to the other things, I think I mentioned ivory, but it could, the GT200, I mean, it could find car bombs in the next town. It had a lot of, basically there wasn't anything that you could detect that it couldn't detect.
That's what makes it so great.
There was another UK company that sold a very similar / identical device called the Alpha 6. That company was called the Advanced Tactical Security and Communications Limited.
Are any of these outfits connected to our old friends?
No, our old friends, as far as one can tell, Wade Quattlebaum got out of the business.
They got out of the fraud game?
He only died he just died not that long ago, in 2016, I think. And weirdly, his obituary does not mention, it talks about him being an avid sportsman, but it does not talk about
how he found his golf balls?
No, the Quadro tracker. No, this appears to be an example of maybe trademark infringement, but once you've got a good idea and once you've got a dowsing rod
Is
that
it
really works.
Is it close enough that clearly it's not just a parallel scheme? It's actually somebody who was aware of the success the Quadro tracker had in the U.S.?
It's hard to believe that Wade Quattlebaum isn't in, I want to call him Quattlebottom, that Quattlebaum isn't involved because it is exactly the same device in every respect. I'm not sure down to the dead ants, but it has the...
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, maybe you switch them out for ladybugs.
It has the card reader. It has the whole nine. But a key difference is that in the UK, the device was actually, it was endorsed by the government because it was something that Advanced Tactical Security and Communications was taking to arms fairs and selling as a UK export to the nations of the world. And so the Royal Engineers actually put on a demonstration of them at arms fairs, and the UK Department of Trade was active in brokering deals, selling the GT200 and the Alpha 6.
Where's the oversight there? They were not interested in whether or not the stuff they were selling worked?
Well, I think the excitement, this was post 9/11 and post U.S., Afghan, and Iraq wars. This was a boom time if you were selling gadgets. And so I think the British government was excited to get in on the game, like any nation that was trying to sell guns and tanks and stuff.
And it's just magical thinking? Like,
the guy came and said, hey, this is a really great device that can see ivory through walls. And there was not, it was just I guess, a frenzy.
I just think plenty of lay people with or without any kind of college degree would think there's no way that thing points at ivory through walls.
I'm going to snap my fingers and point my finger at you. You're 100% right, Ken. If somebody walked in the room right now and pointed a transistor radio at us and said, my detector senses that you are wearing a funny outfit, I would go, get out of here. How did you get down into our bunker? We have 7 layers of security. I don't get how anyone could have been taken in by this, but thousands were.
It doesn't build a lot of trust in law enforcement or any other institution.
Well, that's that's not my point here. I'm not trying to. You
just want to keep parking illegally. You don't want
law enforcement.
But do we? Well, let me ask you this: do we know anything about the motivations of the people involved? I mean,
they want to keep their country safe.
Like, it's basically Theranos for cops, right?
Yes,
it's a thing that doesn't work. But those people were like, if we just get the funding for this, maybe we can get it working in time for the actual tests to work,
This is what
But nobody working on this could have thought, hey, with a little more work, I'll just get the right arrangement of ants on this index card.
No, this is what I was getting at early on when I asked about your moral code, which is, there are a lot of people that get prosecuted for trying to do something and failing or fudging the numbers. But then
for the greater good.
But then there's the Theranos example where, wait a minute, this didn't work, but she pretended it did. And then there's this where there was from the moment that Quattlebaum took like an empty game controller, glued some ants into it and stuck a Radio Shack antenna on it, it was just pure malicious dishonesty. And the thing is, if he was telling you that you could hear your dead relatives, that's one thing. But he knew that pointing this device, that people would take this device, point it at kids and use it as an excuse to frisk them.
I almost think he's not, if he was a con artist, he wouldn't be gluing ants to paper.
So you think he's insane?
That's where I'm landing, because if you want to just put like a weird looking microchip or circuit board in a little empty game controller, you can do so for a few dollars. The fact that he went to the trouble to glue ants to something makes me think, on some level, that he thought that was a good solution to the problem. Whether the problem is finding ivory or tricking a school district, I'm not sure, but it's not the right response to either endeavor.
The global technical company was headed by an Englishman by the name of Gary Bolton, who made over 45 million pounds selling the GT200 to nations of the world.
I guess we do have motive.
And was convicted in 2013 and was sent to prison for 7 years for fraud. He said, when confronted with the fact that when again it was discovered, because the connection with the Quadro tracker wasn't made. There was a whole new discovery process after these devices being used in nations around the world, and multiple instances of bomb detecting units pointing their Quadro tracker at a motorcycle and saying, "This one's clear," and then the motorcycle explodes and 5 people die.
Oops.
Or, the Quadro tracker points at a car and says, "This one's full of drugs," and the car is empty, but 3 people, were killed by the cops who were,
I mean, that must have happened all the time.
all the time. And it only was investigated later. Now we're talking about 2013. Gary Bolton was convicted. He said at the time, "The lack of electronic parts does not mean it does not operate to specification."
Hey, that seems very close to a quadrobomian settlement.
Mm-hmm.
Sentiment.
I think the president of another guy by the name of James McCormick was convicted of fraud for this. But the true scale of the disaster was only really can only really be described by telling the story of the Thai army.
Okay.
So these were bought in profusion by nations around the world: India, Lebanon, Jordan, China.
The Thai should be using it to find buried Buddhas or whatever it is that we've read about troubles them.
It was sold to a lot of nations in Africa, Zambia, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, as an ivory detection device to combat smuggling.
Mm-hmm.
The UN Environmental Program actually bought 15 GT200s to use in combating smuggling.
Nice job, UN.
In Mexico, they sold over 700 of these for $27 million. And in Mexico, they were known as the Devil's Ouija board. If you can think of all the kids that got pulled over and put against the wall, when it was suggested that there be some independent testing done of the Mexican ones within Mexican, media, there was some suspicion, like, what? Can this what? Do what? We should test this. And the Mexican army said that their contract prohibited independent testing of the devices.
It's analogous to the facilitated communication doctrine of it would be disrespectful to test these.
That's right. But the Thai army went bonkers. They bought somewhere close to 800 different ones of these devices, equipped with 21 different sensor card packs.
Wow.
Making each device $36,000 from a subsidiary company in Thailand called the Ava Satcom Limited. And Ava Satcom sold these to the Thai government, and the Thai army and police, and every branch, Air Force, Navy, every branch ended up using these devices to, in their estimation, great effect. So much so that when the devices were shown to not work, the army and many Thai, public figures actively denounced those results, said that, maybe your science says that these don't work, but our soldiers in the field know better. We have, convicted so many smugglers and gun runners and drugged out kids and ivory smugglers and rhinoceros riders, hamburglers. And so we're not giving them up no matter what you say. There was a corruption or an anti-graft commission that studied how this could possibly have gone so far awry.
A lot of it's sunk costs, right? Like, we would look pretty dumb if these don't work, therefore they work. It's why people are still voting for Trump. Well,
yeah, and the Thai army kept investing in them even after the founders in England had all been prosecuted and sent to jail. The Ava group, the Ava Satcom group, were put on trial as part of this anti-graft commission, but they said, look, we didn't even want to, we had nothing to do with these. The army came to us and said we needed to find them and bring them. The army decided that they needed them. The anti-graft commission only reached its final conclusions in 2018.
Wow. And
after 10 years of investigating the GT200s and the Quadro Rams and the femur farmers, they prosecuted 3 minor officials for, irregular bookkeeping.
Some scapegoats.
Stephen Fry actually saw these in action on a visit to Kenya, as a part of, watched them being used to try and detect smuggled ivory. And it may not surprise you.
Is this something he wrote about in a book? Or?
Yeah. Well, he was quoted as saying, and I don't think this will surprise you, knowing what we know about Stephen Fry, that he said that is a ridiculous device, and it is, and to employ it is cruel. It's cruelty to the operator to ask them to
credulously use it,
to use this as an ivory detector.
That's a funny take. It's a workers' comp issue. We need to send our finest British panel show hosts around the world to just sanity check all the law enforcement that's going on.
That's right.
They've got some free time. They only do 20 shows a year on some stage in Wales.
I wish that I could tell you that was the end of the story, but there have been some recent devices, including one. Now, these don't look exactly like Quadro trackers. There's the SniffX and the SniffX Plus, which were developed by the Homeland Safety International Corporation. And the SniffX Plus, the U.S. military actually bought 8 of them for $50,000 just a few years ago.
Just recently, only to find out that it's also an empty Theranos box?
It's an empty Theranos box, but what's interesting about the SniffX is that the people running the SniffX company, it was actually just a front for a stock floating gambit where they released a bunch of press releases touting the ability of the SniffX Plus to find drugs and guns.
And pump up the stock.
And their stock went from 80 cents to $6 and they made $32 million overnight. But they got busted by the SEC for a securities fraud. In 2014 in Egypt, a device called the CFast device was sold, and its claim was it could detect hepatitis C.
The C in CFast is for Hep C.
But as recently as...
Do you have to have a Polaroid picture of a hepatitis bacteria to put in there?
You put a fingerprint of somebody and it can sniff the fingerprint and then it knows whether you have Hep C. But as recently as 2020, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard in Iran was touting the success of the Mastan 110 COVID detecting Quadro tracker.
I guess we're lucky, in the same way that mRNA vaccines were already in the pipeline, we're lucky that the same tech that lets an empty box find ivory and golf balls also works on the coronavirus.
That's right. Well,
We'd be in a much worse world if that strange coincidence hadn't happened.
Science and technology make our lives easier.
And that concludes the Quadro tracker, entry 1016.LK1202, certificate number 21137, in the omnibus. If you're also interested in devices that do nothing but cause scandal and unhappiness, maybe social media is for you. We are at Ken Jennings and at John Roderick and at Omnibus Project on various platforms until we get deplatformed from them. You can...
Does Omnibus on Twitter have a blue check? It does or doesn't?
It does not.
No, it doesn't.
I feel like Omnibus...
Nothing to lose.
Omnibus Project on Twitter, I was very diligent about keeping up with. It's been over a year, I think. Yeah, Elon can have it. You can also email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. Send us your own dried ants to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. Find fellow futurelings on Reddit and Facebook and whatnot. Facebook now the second less evil social media billionaire outfit.
Never thought I'd see the day.
Never thought I'd see the day. You thought they would have that title sewn up for decades to come. But no, currently in second place. And most importantly, at patreon.com/omnibus project. If you're interested in spending, writing a blank check for a thing of, probably no actual monetary value.
What?
Could I recommend our Patreon? Think of the well-being that comes of a Thai policeman knowing that his Jeep contains no heroin.
Right.
In the same way, you can purchase that same peace of mind by supporting the show at patreon.com/omnibus project. You'll receive imaginary perks and prizes. They're all ones and zeros, but they're pretty good. There's images, there's bonus shows. You can suggest a show topic, as Sean did day before yesterday. All good stuff. Go to patreon.com. Instead of buying crooked, fraudulent law enforcement equipment, support patreon.com/omnibus project.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we wish you many goods and cheese, and hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.